G'day, battlers, and today we're jumping back in for another Arcana Cup tournament sweep, this time from fellow Silph Arena content creator SosaFlo from the Poke Battle Network. Now, this team is a little bit different to the team that we showcased in the last video. For one thing, we don't see a Shiftry anywhere, and also we're packing in that Haunter and the Tyrunt. So we'll go through the team for a little bit. It's pretty brief, and then we'll jump into the battles, but I will say real quick, if you haven't checked out that last video from Diorosaur's Arcana Cup tournament sweep, a lot of words to string together, then definitely check that one out as well, because you might sort of prefer one team over the other. That sort of might help you to put your own Arcana Cup team together. So with that said, let's take a look at the Sosa's team in the bottom right hand side over there with the Pelipper, the Haunter, Tyrunt, Ferrothorn, Cofagrigus, and the Defense Deoxys. So it's a bit of an interesting team there. So we have Tyrunt. Tyrunt is sort of a neutral pick. It's got that Dragon Tail. It's got access to Dragon Claw and Ancient Power is what Sosa's running here. And it sort of just works a little bit like Ancient Power gives it access to an anti-flyer, so something to throw against Pelippers, throw against Jumpluffs, while also doing an okay job up against the Superior, just because the Dragon typing resists Grass, even though the Rock type is super effective. I wouldn't want to put a Tyrunt up against a Superior, but, you know, it happens, and it's not the worst matchup in the world if you have some energy. Ancient Power is not a great move. So to be honest, it's a pretty sucky matchup for Tyrunt. But it is sort of just an interesting Pokemon because dragons, whenever there's dragons eligible in the meta, you sort of like to have them for that little bit of neutral coverage. Haunter is a little bit of another interesting one where SosaFlo is running Ice Punch, Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball because it's big nuky move, you get same type attack bonus from Haunter. It's a big... Shadow Ball is Shadow Ball. Everyone knows what that does. It does a lot of damage to a lot of things in this meta, especially when there's things like Cofagrigus and Malamar and, other Haunters. The Gengar was ranked pretty highly on the PvP Poke rankings, although I think that Haunter is probably superior. And one of the other reasons that Haunter is superior to Gengar is that it has access to Ice Punch. Ice Punch giving you that counterplay up against the grass types, so things like Jumpluff, Superior, Shiftry. You have this option to sort of throw that relatively quick fast move that does a lot of damage because of Haunter's high attack stat. So with that said, the rest of the team is sort of relatively standard in the terms of we have Pelipper as that sort of Pokemon that threatens everything with a Hurricane. We have Ferrothorn as that sort of not Shiftry. It's sort of the, I think, secondary grass type. Like I sort of rate Shiftry number 1, Ferrothorn number 2, because Ferrothorn can sort of take a few more hits, sort of just... it feels a little better of a Pelipper counter as well, because some of the other grasses, like you get hit with a Hurricane, you're sort of gone. I sort of like Ferrothorn's availability of having Thunder, although, to be honest, most people I've actually seen just running Power Whip Flash Cannon. Flash Cannon to just hit everything for big nuky damage, Shiftry's included, and then Power Whip, sort of just deciding that it's good enough against Pelipper. You generally actually still do pretty well just with Power Whip. So Ferrothorn just sort of in some ways superior to Shiftry, and I guess SosaFlo, by running double Ghost with Haunter and Cofagrigus, sort of has the anti-Ghost coverage in a way and doesn't need the Shiftry as much. It's weird that Ghosts are anti-Ghost, but that is just how typing works in Pokemon Go. But of course, we have Mesa over here, who fellow Aussie battler, one of the girls at PvP. We showcased one of her runs last month in the... How am I already blanking on the name? It was literally like 10 days ago. Whatever that cup may have been. Polkadot. It was Polkadot. I do Silph, guys. I know what's up. But we showcased her battles there. At the moment, she's top 10 on the Australian leaderboard and definitely a really strong battler. Someone you do not want to be... you'd be scared to face her in round 1 like SosaFlo is doing here. And Mesa, with team over there, has got the Pelipper, Jumpluff, Cofagrigus, Tyrunt, Malamar, and Superior. So running double Grass with the Superior Jumpluff. And also, interestingly, not running the Shiftry. So has brought the Pelipper as a sort of neutralish pick. And I will mention as well that SosaFlo doesn't have the CPs in his mons because this was an unranked Arcana Cup tournament. So, you know, it's a little bit lazy on Sosa's part, but we'll let it slide. So with that said, let's jump into the battles in round 1 up against Mesa 76 with the Haunter into the Superior. So pretty decent matchup here because we have those really quick Ice Punches. So Mesa swaps straight out into the Malamar. Now this is a little bit of a rough spot where SosaFlo really needs to land the Shadow Ball to be able to win this matchup. So shields up that first foul play, going straight for the Shadow Ball, really hoping that Mesa does not shield. Unfortunately, it does though, which means that this Haunter is in for a little bit of trouble. So SosaFlo making the big brain play to swap out into Ferrothorn, and Mesa, or catching the foul play from Mesa's Malamar, is still a little bit scared here because a superpower from Malamar, I don't think it'll quite take out Ferrothorn. Yes, survives with the slimmest little margin of health, so able to get the power whip off. That is huge for SosaFlo. Takes out the Malamar. Does mean that Mesa is going to be able to come back in with the superior and get 2 Vine Whips of farm, which, you know, not ideal, but it is what it is. But now Haunter coming in. Ice Punch does about half of superior's health, so you sort of need to land 2 if you want Haunter to win this matchup. You can see that the Vine Whips are starting to add up on the Haunter as well, just because Haunter is not very bulky, obviously because it's such a high attack stat. So farming up I don't know if that was a little bit greedy or what. I mean, look, he got away with it, throwing the Ice Punch there. Superior, not quite done, but a quick swap from Mesa to KO, and now it is unfortunately Tyrunt in the back. Sosa's in a pretty rough spot here because neither of these moves is going to one-hit KO, and Cofagrigus is going to pretty comfortably Shadow Claw down here. Actually goes to the Dragon Claw. Ancient Power does more damage, even though Dragon Claw is a more efficient move. So if you can only get 1, Ancient Power is the way, but it doesn't do that much more than a Dragon Claw. So unfortunately, it takes an L game 1. Going into game 2, interestingly, Mesa swapping out from the Cofagrigus mirror match into Malamar. I guess deciding that Cofagrigus is going to be pretty important later on. Maybe sort of concerned about a defense Deoxys or potentially Tyrunt as well, because Cofagrigus does pretty well there, as we just saw. But regardless, SosaFlo landing the Shadow Ball onto Malamar. Cofagrigus can tank a foul play, can't tank 2, so SosaFlo deciding to burn his second shield there, burning both shields. Also deciding that Cofagrigus is going to be important here. Going for that Dark Pulse, slightly less energy, slightly less damage up against Mesa's own Cofagrigus. It does get the shield, so really nice there, and then a swap from Sosa into Ferrothorn. Cofagrigus still not in a bad spot in this matchup at all. That Shadow Ball still doing a ton of damage, and with SosaFlo having no shields left over, does mean that Cofagrigus only needs to get to 1 more Shadow Ball to KO this Ferrothorn. And Sosa's Switch Timer isn't up, so Cofagrigus just going to take this Ferrothorn out here. I don't think Cofagrigus has a whole lot of energy though. So SosaFlo with the double Ghost here, a little bit scared because a single charge move would be deadly. You can see we're now getting the invisible Pokemon glitch, but you can see with the grass typing in the top right corner that is a superior. So that Ice Punch does about half health. Mesa still holding onto that 1 shield. I feel like a Frenzy Plant could be enough here. Oh, it's not. Okay, Haunter is very squishy, but is able to get taken down with a simul KO there, and now going for the full farm down SosaFlo by the skin of his teeth. He barely had that one. Mesa was right on that charge move, but SosaFlo able to get the farm down there, even fighting through the invisible bug that is currently plaguing the game. But it does mean that we're 1-1 going to game 3 of round 1, and we have Haunter into Malamar. Again, Haunter really needs to land the Shadow Ball here, or else those foul plays are just going to outpace. So Sosa can also decide to go for an Ice Punch bait, but I think that sort of puts you on a bit of a back foot. So burns the first shield and actually is going to go for the Ice Punch bait. Do we get the shield from Mesa? And we do get the shield, and then the quick swap out into Ferrothorn. Has to be a little bit scared of a superpower now. Again, as we saw earlier, Ferrothorn can tank 1, but doesn't want to. So shields up that first one. Malamar's attack stat is now debuffed, so we'll see if Mesa decides to sort of go for another one, or just save up some energy for later. Looks like she is just going straight for it, so this won't do as much damage as that first one would have. So Ferrothorn sort of surviving with half health there, and then a swap into Cofagrigus. SosaFlo going for the Thunder here. Power Whip, definitely the move you would prefer to go for, just because that Thunder, not as efficient when you have that same type attack bonus from Ferrothorn. Actually, well, SosaFlo identifying that he maybe only was going to get 1 move off. So, not a bad play, because now we're going to see the Haunter come in. He's going to go for this Ice Punch, which I think might just be enough because Haunter has that really high attack stat. Going to take that Cofagrigus down. We see Sosa mad tapping on the coffer, and here comes the Pelipper in the back. There are no shields here, and I think that Cofagrigus might be able to get this Shadow Ball off. I don't think that this is a KO. Pelipper going to be able to hang on there, and will be able to get to a Hurricane. But I think that Cofagrigus is also going to survive the Hurricane, so it will be able to Shadow Claw down. has to be a little bit worried about the Malamar here. Oh, yeah, not going to be able to get to a charge move. Malamar is going to take Cofagrigus out, but Malamar not with a lot of energy back there. So now in comes back the Haunter from SosaFlo and able to get to the Ice Punch that will KO the Malamar and secure round 1 against Mesa. So really nicely done there. And I think it really is also showing off just Haunter being that little bit of a quick Pokemon. Really was helpful that Sosa was able to land the big damage earlier on in that game, of course. There's a lot of sort of... I guess this is why I personally am not a big Haunter user, because Haunter can be a little bit... it can swing games in a lot of ways depending on how you and your opponent play it out, right? So I think that means that it's a bit of a higher skill mod, higher skilled than me, for sure. So you really need to land those Shadow Balls, or you need to get the Ice Punch baits. We saw Sosa go for the Ice Punch bait, get the shield, and then swap out into the Ferrothorn, calling that the first move from Mesa was going to be this superpower, and then sort of able to happily take that second one and just sort of survive long enough to get that damage off that he wanted. I guess you could argue in some sense that because Ferrothorn had a little bit more health, it meant that Mesa got a little bit more farm. But actually, in saying that, if he took the first superpower, he would have been KO'd quicker than that regardless. So I don't think it really mattered. I think Sosa played it pretty well there. So we'll go into round 2 now up against Fat Babby Lips, who is running a Jump Bluff Shadow Tyranitar. Shout out to the Shadow Aggron from the Diorosaur video. And then also Pelipper, Haunter as well, Defense, Deoxys, and Ferrothorn. So relatively similar teams, slightly different, running the Jump Bluff and the Shadow Titar. I was already, like, before Diorosaur's run, I was a little bit cautious about the Shadow Aggron. He used it pretty decently. Not decently enough that I was like, oh, this is a must-have mon. But I'm interested to see how Fat Babby Lips goes with the Tyranitar as an alternative option. Because it does have that dark typing, so you've got a little bit more to throw against the Haunters and the Cofagrigus. But because you are... like Tyranitar itself in the Great League, already a squishy Pokemon, throw the Shadow bonus on there, you are not living for very long, but you're also doing so much damage. So let's jump into the battles here. I'm really interested to see if Fat Babby Lips decides to bring it out. Straight away, we've got the Ferrothorn into the Shadow Titar for sure, and we see the swap out into Haunter. And this is an interesting spot for Sosa because he doesn't really have an answer to Haunter. So he throws the Power Whip, going to bring it down to the yellow, and then going to swap it into Tyrunt. I actually really like this play because Tyrunt will be able to tank... oh no, a bit of low battery there. We'll be able to tank the Shadow Punch from the Haunter. And then here comes the Tyranitar, who is still going to be, just because it's a bit squishy, is going to take a lot of damage from this neutral dragon damage. Already down into the yellow. Almost a full KO. Tyrunt doing so much work, and this Tyranitar just not going to be able to get to a single charge move. So, like SosaFlo has really just wiped the floor with this game, with Tyrunt sort of being able to put out that huge damage. Haunter not really being able to take too much, and then Tyrunt just really being able to push through Tyranitar. So based on this first game alone, not entirely sold on Tyranitar, and I guess against SosaFlo's team, it's a little bit scary to use. I guess maybe hoping that SosaFlo might bring out that Pelipper. SosaFlo did say to me in the DMs that he maybe didn't use Pelipper in this tournament. He didn't give me a lot of confidence in that message, so I don't know whether that's like accurate, like he might have forgotten one, but it's possible that he doesn't use Pelipper in this entire tournament. Potentially sort of, I think Haunter and Pelipper sort of work in a similar way, where they both can sort of, you get a little bit of an advantage and you can just run away. So we'll see if, I think Haunter sort of does it a little bit scarier. Just because it's a little bit quicker. Shadow Ball really hurts, Ice Punch really hurts. And I know I sort of like gave up on commentating this game, but we sort of all knew where it was going, where it was just that Ferrothorn against the world, and SosaFlo able to pretty comfortably Shadow Claw down there. So we go into game 2 now with the Haunter mirror match. Okay, this is going to be interesting. We can see that Sosa in the back has the Ferrothorn and the Cofagrigus. Maybe he tries to make a catch onto the Ferrothorn, but no, they are just going gangbusters at each other. Sosa deciding to burn the shield on this charge move, so meaning that he'll get that Shadow Claw through. I'm not sure if that was a quick swap. I'm not sure if the Haunter in the back is alive. Goes to the Ice Punch. Okay, yeah, and Haunter in the back is down. And unfortunately for Fat Babby Lips, because Defense Deoxys is doing that resisted counter damage, Haunter is able to get to another Ice Punch up against that Defense Deoxys. So again, SosaFlo really putting himself in a quite advantageous position by sort of just relying on that Haunter to really carry through. Now we have the Ferrothorn coming out here, and Fat Babby Lips in a slightly better position than in the last game. just because we're a little bit further through, lands that huge Shadow Ball and catching the move onto his own Ferrothorn. That is absolutely disgusting. Nice catch from SosaFlo and just wasting so much energy from Fat Babby Lips. We saw that Fat Babby was running the Flash Cannon, where SosaFlo is running that Thunder, both sort of the bigger damaging moves, and you can see that Sosa is going to come to be able to tank this Flash Cannon, and then presumably Bullet Seed all the way down, and then we're going to see that see the Fancy Oxys come back out. Have to take a Power Whip here. I think Fat Babby Lip still has a shield. Yes, there's the last shield. Can probably take Ferrothorn out here. Although Sosa still has a shield. So actually able to shield up, throw the Power Whip, and that's going to take out the Defense Deoxys, and that's going to be GG's on game 2. So SosaFlo really comfortably taking this round. But we'll see if round 3 Fat Babby Lips can sort of correct for that Haunter from SosaFlo, and Sosa actually no Haunter, going for Deoxys in the lead here with the Rock Slide Psycho Boost moveset. Deoxys doesn't mind this matchup. Power Whips definitely add up, but you're sort of doing a lot of damage back. I think that was a Haunter that was a swap into, so this Psycho Boost would do a lot of damage. Oh my gosh, that's huge. SosaFlo just instantly destroying one of Fat Babby Lips' Pokemon, and now going to get another Psycho Boost here, and just, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but hey, and to be honest, I almost wonder if it's better off just going straight counters so you don't attack debuff yourself, but at this point, Sosa is in such a strong position here. Bringing that Cofagrigus back in. Again, both battlers have 2 shields, so SosaFlo sort of comfortably, actually going to take the first Power Whip, will then be able to, okay, I was going to say Shadow Claw down with potentially having to burn a shield, but we see Fat Babby Lips swap out into the Tyranitar, so going to burn both shields here, but unfortunately, SosaFlo is back with the Tyrunt, and again, Dragon Tails just doing so much damage to that Shadow Tyranitar. It is just not bulky enough. I really think that this is where Shadow Aggron would be performing so much better than the Shadow Tyranitar, just because you have that steel typing. But regardless, a little bit of a spoilers here, but that is GG's against Fat Babby Lips. SosaFlo are really just able to use that team really well with Haunter, just creating so much space between, if you think of it like a running race, like SosaFlo just gets such an advantage, but just getting those big demolishing moves, like just Tyrunt destroying that Tyranitar, the Psycho Boost landing onto the Haunter, like just huge stuff. But going to round 3 here, which is the final round, up against Tio Ollie, who is running the Cofagrigus, Jumpluff, Tyrunt, Superior, Pelipper, and Crustle. So interestingly, what that means is that SosaFlo has not had to face a single Shiftry. Now, I was sort of concerned about that, because I was kind of like, I was saying to him, Shiftry feels like it would be pretty good against your team. Like, I feel like I would use Shiftry against his team. You've got sort of neutral play up against the Pelipper. You've got a decent spot up against Haunter. Haunter definitely threatening you with the Ice Punch, of course. You've got Tyrunt that doesn't love facing Shiftry. Ferrothorn is pretty decent for Ferrothorn. Cofagrigus also really bad up against Shiftry, and then Defense Deoxys is a little bit of a play back and forth. I'd sort of prefer to be the Defense Deoxys in that matchup, but Shiftry still does pretty good as well. So like, he sort of said that people don't seem to be using Shiftry against him. He's played some other teams against Shiftrys that he's still been able to come out on top. So I just thought that was interesting to note, when like I see Shiftry as one of the big 2, right? It's Pelipper Shiftry. We've seen a lot of Pelippers, not a lot of Shiftry. Sort of people going for other grass types like Superior. Superior sort of having access to that Frenzy Plant, obviously one of the best moves in the game. I think that generally the other stats and moves from Pokemon is sort of what limits it, or I guess the usability of the grass typing in a lot of metas, but also has that Aerial Ace for sort of, I guess, the other grasses that are running around as well, like Shiftry, for example. So it does pretty well against Shiftry too. So I wonder if everyone was just sort of hoping to land their Superiors on Shiftrys and it just didn't really happen. Because I think, like, if I look at the tournament, I'm pretty sure that the team, or like any team that Sosa didn't play, had a Shiftry on it. Yeah, that's accurate. So Sosa played every non-Shiftry team. There were only 3. Well, I guess he had one as well. So himself, he sort of grouped up with all the non-Shiftry players. But with that said, let's jump into round 3 here up against Tio Ollie. Crustle is an interesting pick here that we haven't seen this video. I'd sort of guess, sort of in that similar role as Aggron and Tyranitar, that you'd probably get run Smackdown. Again, that anti-flyer sort of role. But Sosa only running that Pelipper, so... And without Shiftry to sort of take that bug damage as well, Ferrothorn does really, really well against Crustle. I sort of don't expect Tio to bring the Crustle in this game. Also doesn't actually have anything in the way of dark damage, so must be relying on that Cofagrigus, potentially with the sort of Dark Pulse Shadow Ball moveset. Yeah, I think Tio must be relying on that Cofagrigus and potentially the Tyrunt as well, doing that neutral damage like SosaFlo did in that last round. But let's jump into it. We've got the Superior in the lead up against SosaFlo's Cofagrigus. So an interesting sort of a neutralish matchup both ways. SosaFlo is just mad tapping for the Dark Pulse, slightly less energy again, maybe hoping for a shield there. Tanks the first Frenzy Plant, which really does hurt. SosaFlo deciding to then get a little bit more energy and now go for the Dark Pulse. Does get the shield, which is really nice. I mean, it's, you know, it's okay for Sosa. It's not like some game flipping, like it's not a huge advantage. It's a little bit of an advantage, which sort of feels a little bit risky to me, but it's worked for Sosa here. So he's able to get to this Shadow Ball, do a ton of damage to that Superior, and sort of similar to last time, is actually able to Shadow Claw down, which is huge for Sosa. He's mad tapping to try and get the Dark Pulse, but not going to happen there. And now he's going to bring his second Ghost up against the Ghost that has just come onto the field. Going for the Ice Punch, potentially baiting a Shadow Punch here that Tio would be pretty scared of, and does get the shield, which is pretty nice. And at this point, Sosa actually wanting to keep the Haunter alive. Shield to the Dark Pulse, and now we'll just get Shadow Claw. Oh no, he's going to get the Ice Punch off. I thought he was just going to get taken out, but no, able to survive on 1 HP at a dream there, and then get that Ice Punch off. And now it is Ferrothorn versus Tyrunt, and you're going to see here that even though Tyrunt has that Dragon typing, it makes Grass sort of neutral. It still does a lot of damage there, and just again, because Tyrunt doesn't really have a move to do big damage to Ferrothorn, like you've got that Ancient Power and it's not doing a whole lot. You could maybe like fish for the boost, but I don't even think of Ancient Power boost would save you from this Power Whip here. So for SosaFlo, going to take game 1 once the game lets the Power Whip go through, and that is GG's. Game 2, we've got the Cofagrigus in the lead again, but Tio deciding to bring the Cough Up Mirror out this time. Sosa, again, just running the exact same team back with the Haunter and Ferrothorn in the back. Going straight for the Dark Pulse. I feel like they've probably both done the same thing here. Yep, there's the Dark Pulse that Sosa decided to shield. So Tio has to make a decision here how he wants to play this matchup based on sort of with the knowledge that he's going to win CMP here. So Sosa just going straight for the charge move again. So Tio doing the same thing, forcing Sosa's second shield. I feel like he could have let Cofagrigus go and come back in with the Haunter for the farm down. But decides to sort of stay in, both battlers burning their shields, and now they're just going to KO each other simultaneously, and it's going to be a waiting game. Who clicks the trigger first, or do they just mad click at the last second? It looks like they're going for it, and it is Haunter versus the Superior. Not a bad spot for this Haunter at all, especially with the speed that these Ice Punches get to. Again, it does about half of Superior's health, so brings it down into the yellow, and now catching the move into Ferrothorn. Sosa making some really nice catches onto this Ferrothorn, which is interesting because in the last video, we actually saw Diorosaur be the victim of a bunch of Ferrothorn catches. But game finally letting... Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here, but we've got that first Frenzy Plant, and now we have an Aerial Ace coming onto this Ferrothorn as well. We've got the invisible Pokemon bug once again, but SosaFlo, he won last time. Can he do it again? We've got the Aerial Ace coming through, bringing Ferrothorn down into the red. I think this is going to be enough to KO the Ferrothorn, probably. Yeah, down goes the Ferrothorn, in comes the Haunter, but Haunter, oh my gosh, it's Tyrunt in the back and going straight for that Shadow Ball that I think... Will it? Yeah, will be enough to take out that Tyrunt. One more Shadow Claw and takes that out, which means SosaFlo sweeps through the tournament. But we've got one more battle left to go with the Cofagrigus up against the Superior. And again, he's just running the same line back with a double Ghost with Ferrothorn. Is that sort of just a bit of a soak is how he's using it. So like Cofagrigus, not super bulky. Haunter, not at all bulky. Ferrothorn sort of there to take a lot of damage, catch these charge moves as he's been doing. We'll see if he does it again here. Now, Cofagrigus, no, we're not going to see a catch on this one. Shielding up the Aerial Ace? Okay, just a Frenzy Plant. And then going for the farm down. I'm not sure if he's getting... He does! SosaFlo, knowing his health, knowing his mons, can get the farm down. And here comes the Cofagrigus. I don't think he's going to get 2 here, so maybe should have gone for the Shadow Ball. Turns out it doesn't matter because Tio does decide to shield. And now the Ferrothorn coming in here, who's going to comfortably be able to tank any of these charge moves. is just the Dark Pulse, and now going for the Thunder again. I feel like I need to check. I feel like that's not the most efficient move there. I'll check at the end. But we're going for the... Oh, was about to go for the Power Whip, but Tio going for the move right before that Power Whip comes through. So going for the... Also does survive, but overtaps. Does not get the Power Whip off. And now Haunter coming in, potentially saving up some energy there. And now Haunter has too big of a hill to climb. Goes for the Shadow Ball here and doesn't even hit the bubbles. I think Sosa knows he's lost here. And that's GG's. If you got that Power Whip off, he potentially could have got that shield or taken Cofagrigus out, and then Haunts would have still only got to 1 Ice Punch, would have been able to get to 2, so maybe he still would have lost, even with the Power Whip. But let me just check the Ferrothorn versus Cofagrigus, Power Whip versus Thunderbolt. Yeah, Power Whip actually does more raw damage, so it's just it's more efficient, it costs slightly less, and it does more damage. So big advice, do not go for Thunder on a Cofagrigus, just go straight Power Whip, and that's just the general advice, unless Thunder is going to be super effective. But regardless of that fact, SosaFlo, with that, see, I've jumbled up my outro here, so usually I say it in like a very particular way, and it just rolls over the tongue. I haven't said it this time, so now I'm off the rails, guys. I don't know what I'm doing, but thank you to SosaFlo for sending his battles through again. I actually feel like I might not have mentioned it. The link to PokeBattle Network is in the description down below. Definitely go give them a subscribe because they're often putting out more Silph Arena videos than I am. So definitely worth giving them a check out and a subscribe for sure. Let me know what you think about Haunter and Tyrunt in particular. Haunter is a very interesting Pokemon, and I think is again one of those mons that works really well in certain scenarios. Can go very poorly if things don't go your way. Like up against, if you go for that Shadow Ball against Malamar and Malamar shields, you might be a little bit up a creek. And I guess that's when you're sort of forced to play a bit more dynamically and then try and catch a move into a Ferrothorn, for example. Which we saw Sosa do in that in round 1, I think it was, up against Mesa. And Tyrunt, to be honest, I'm not sold on Tyrunt. I feel like we saw a lot of Tyrunt action against the Tyranitar, so it did very well against Tyranitar. I don't think that's the bar. I don't think that's what you sort of want to be that's not what makes a good mon in the Arcana Cup. But obviously it is definitely a decent mon. I just think I need to see a little bit more from Tyrunt to sort of be confident in its ability, especially because it's quite it's a rare one, right? Like, I don't think that actually I powered one up on stream yesterday to 1500, but I don't think I had enough candy to double move it. So it's sort of a rare mon. So again, I mean, coming back to that, if you don't have Tyrunt, if you're sort of looking for a team to copy, which I've definitely done in the past, and this team just doesn't sort of work for you because you don't have Tyrunt or you don't have a Defense Deoxys and it's impossible to trade for because it's a mythical, then maybe go check out Diorosaw's video. So that's, I'll link that in the description if I remember. It's the last video on the channel as well. So Diorosaur running a slightly different team there with Shiftry. Unlike all of these teams. But with that said, thank you all so much for watching, and again, thank you to Sosa for not only sharing his footage, but for keeping up the Silph Arena content vibe alive. So with that said, thank you to my patrons and supporters on YouTube as well, because they are absolutely lovely people. And I'll see you in the next video, whatever it may be.